I had everything, a family, a legacy, trust, and they destroyed it. My wife, my future son-in-law, plotting behind my back, lying, stealing. They thought I wouldn't see it. They were wrong. What would you do if the people you trusted most were the ones betraying you? You know that feeling when everything in your life seems solid, unshakable, like a skyscraper built on the strongest foundation? That was my life. I built something real, something people respected. Ferguson Construction wasn't just a company. It was my legacy, my name, my pride. Decades of sweat, precision, and unwavering integrity turned a small business into a giant. I played fair, refused shortcuts, and made enemies for standing by my values. But that was fine. I knew who I was. I trusted my instincts. And above all, I trusted my family. Or so I thought. Brenda was by my side for 28 years. The woman I once believed was my anchor, the one who held everything together. She had a sharp mind, a keen sense for business, and an elegance that could silence a room. When I met her, I was a young man with a dream. She was the kind of woman who could turn a dream into reality. We built everything together, our company, our family, our reputation. I never once questioned her, not even when I probably should. And then there was Kara, my daughter, my greatest pride. Watching her grow into the woman she became was my proof that I had done something right in this world. She had my drive, my precision, my fire. When she told me she was engaged to Jared Cantu, I was intrigued. The young man had charm, intelligence, and an undeniable ambition that reminded me of myself at his age. He spoke of innovation, of revolutionizing construction with sustainable materials. I saw in him what I once saw in my own reflection. Looking back now, I realize how blind I was. Not because I didn't see the signs, but because I refused to. I convinced myself that trust was something you gave, not questioned. That loyalty, once earned, was permanent. But trust is a funny thing. It's like a structure, strong when supported by truth, but devastating when built on lies. And I was about to discover that not everything I built was standing on solid ground. The cracks were already there, small and barely noticeable. A hesitation in Brenda's voice, a lingering glance between her and Jared, late-night phone calls. That ended abruptly when I walked into the room. I brushed them off, ignored the feeling in my gut. Because that's what trust does. It makes you dismiss the impossible, until the impossible is staring you in the face. A wedding is supposed to be a celebration, right? A moment where two families come together, where love is the only thing in the air. That's what I told myself as I watched Kara gush about her plans. She was glowing, eyes bright with excitement, voice filled with the kind of joy that's rare in this world. And Jared, he played his part perfectly. He was attentive, charming, always saying the right thing. People admired him. Hell, I admired him. He reminded me of myself, young and hungry for success. Maybe that's why I didn't see it coming. The engagement party was grand, just as expected. Everyone who mattered in our world was there. Investors, business moguls, old friends who had built their own empires. I stood by my daughter, raising a glass to her future, feeling proud. The speeches were warm, the laughter genuine. And yet, there were moments that didn't sit right. A glance held too long. A touch that lingered where it shouldn't. It was nothing. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I didn't want to be the man who imagined things. Brenda was radiant that night, moving through the crowd like she owned the room. She always had that ability to make people feel important, to turn a simple conversation into something more. She whispered to Jared at one point, something I couldn't hear. He laughed, nodding in agreement. It was harmless, it had to be. But I felt something stir in my chest, something I couldn't name at the time. A warning maybe, a whisper in the back of my mind telling me to look closer. As the wedding plans continued, my role became clear. I was the father of the bride, the man who made things happen. Kara wanted the best, and I would give it to her. No expense spared, no detail overlooked. But amidst the chaos of floral arrangements and venue selections, I noticed something. Brenda and Jared spent more time together than I expected. Meetings about the wedding that didn't require her presence. Phone calls that ended the moment. I walked into the room. Was I overthinking? Was this just my mind playing tricks on me? I pushed the doubts away, convincing myself that this was stress, nothing more. My daughter was getting married. My wife was simply involved, excited even. But deep down something felt off. And if there's one thing I've learned in business, it's that when something feels off, it usually is. It started small, almost insignificant. A shift in tone, a glance that lingered too long, an inside joke I wasn't a part of. At first, I told myself it was nothing, just my mind playing tricks on me. Brenda was my wife. Jared was my future son-in-law. There was no reason for me to think otherwise. And yet, something about them didn't sit right. A moment here, a whisper there, little cracks in a picture-perfect image. I ignored them until I couldn't. Brenda had always been composed, predictable even. But suddenly, she was different. More distant at times, more engaged at others. She had this nervous energy around her, a constant need to be doing something, checking her phone, adjusting her necklace, avoiding my eyes. It wasn't like her. And then there were the late-night calls, the ones that ended the moment I stepped into the room. I wasn't a fool. I knew stress could make people act differently, but this wasn't stress. This was something else. Jared, on the other hand, remained exactly the same. Charismatic, easygoing, always saying the right things. If anything, he seemed more comfortable, too comfortable. He and Brenda had their own conversations now, their own little moments that I wasn't a part of. Just wedding talk, Brenda would say when I asked. But why did it feel like something more? Why did I catch them exchanging glances when they thought no one was looking? Why did my gut tell me I was standing on unstable ground? I tried to brush it off. I was busy, drowning in work, overseeing a massive expansion of the company. I had more important things to focus on. But doubt has a way of creeping in, of eating at you until you can't ignore it anymore. And then, one night, I walked into my office and found something that stopped me cold. Brenda's calendar, left open on my desk. A meeting scheduled at a hotel across town, not a venue we booked for the wedding. Not a place I had ever seen her visit before. I stared at the name beside hers, Jared Cantu. The room felt colder. My hands tightened around the edge of my desk. This wasn't nothing. This was something. And something was very, very wrong. Doubt is a disease. It starts as a whisper, an itch in the back of your mind, something you tell yourself is ridiculous, but once it takes root, it spreads. And the more you ignore it, the worse it gets. I wasn't just doubting anymore, I was investigating. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Something was wrong, and I couldn't afford to be the fool who ignored it. So I did what any businessman would do. I followed the numbers. Started with Jared. On the surface, he was exactly what he claimed to be, a bright young developer with big ideas. But when I looked closer, the numbers didn't add up. Elias, my most trusted project manager, ran the reports for me. There were discrepancies in material costs, inflated invoices, missing funds. It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. Money was being funneled into a company I had never heard of, Sustainable Solutions LLC, a shell company, and the owner, Jared Cantu. The implications hit me like a punch to the gut. My future son-in-law wasn't just ambitious, he was a fraud. He had been using my company, my trust, to fund his own personal empire. But that wasn't the worst part. I could have handled a scheming businessman. I had crushed plenty of those in my career. No, what made my stomach turn was what I found next. Buried within the company records was a pattern, A series of leaked project blueprints, insider bidding information, things that no one outside my inner circle should have had access to. Things that weren't just stolen from me, but given. And the person handing over those secrets, Brenda, my own wife, the woman I had built everything with. She wasn't just involved, she was helping him. And suddenly, the late-night whispers, the secret meetings, the anxious glances all made sense. This wasn't just a wedding. This wasn't just an affair. This was a takeover. I closed the files, my hands steady despite the storm raging inside. They thought they had played me. They thought I wouldn't see it. They thought wrong. Betrayal is an ugly thing. It doesn't hit all at once. It seeps in like a slow poison until it consumes everything. Sitting in my office, staring at the undeniable proof, I felt it spread through me. Anger, disgust, but above all, clarity. They weren't just careless. They were strategic. Brenda and Jared had been planning this for months, maybe even years. And the worst part? I had been too blind to see it. The more I dug, the clearer their plan became. It wasn't just about money. It was about power. They were setting the stage for an acquisition, not the kind you see in boardrooms, the kind that happens in the shadows. A slow, quiet transfer of control. Jared wasn't marrying into my family. He was taking over my company. And Brenda? She was making sure it happened smoothly. Emails, hidden transactions, private meetings at luxury hotels. They had built an entire operation behind my back. Brenda had been feeding Jared insider information, teaching him how to dismantle my empire from within. Once the wedding happened, their next move was clear. They would push me out, frame it as a retirement, a well-earned step away from the company I had spent my life building. And just like that, everything I worked for would belong to them. I tried to understand it. Was it greed? Was it revenge? Or was it something worse, a hunger for something that after 28 years of marriage, I never saw coming? I'd always thought of Brenda as my partner, my equal. But now I saw her for what she truly was, a woman who was never satisfied. She didn't want to stand beside me, she wanted to stand above me. I sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly. They thought they had already won. That was their first mistake. Their second, underestimating me. Because if there's one thing I know about building something great, it's this. You have to know exactly how to tear it down. Some men react to betrayal with rage. They explode, they confront, they demand answers. I'm not one of those men. No, when someone tries to play me, I play them back. Brenda and Jared thought they had control, thought they were running the show. What they didn't realize was that I had just rewritten the script, and they were about to walk straight into their own downfall. The first step, let them believe they were winning. I smiled when I needed to, nodded at the right moments, pretended I was too distracted with work to notice what was happening. I let Brenda plan her perfect wedding, let Jared pitch his brilliant ideas, let them whisper in the corners of my home, thinking I was too blind to see. Every move they made, every carefully orchestrated deception, I let it happen. Because the higher they climbed, the harder they would fall. But I wasn't working alone. Elias Fox, my right-hand man, had seen the red flags before I did. He had already started gathering the evidence, financial records, falsified contracts, proof of insider trading. But that wasn't enough. I needed irrefutable proof, proof that would destroy everything they built together, proof that would turn their private betrayal into a public execution. So I reached out to my contacts, the FBI, a quiet, unofficial conversation. Just enough to get them interested, just enough to let them know that what was happening wasn't just fraud, it was criminal. And just like that, my plan was set, the E. Night before the rehearsal dinner, I stood in my office, watching the city I built from the ground up. In less than 24 hours, Brenda and Jared would have everything they wanted. They just didn't know they were about to lose everything. There's a moment right before a building collapses where everything is still. No movement, no sound, just silence. thick with anticipation. That was the room as I stepped up to the microphone at the rehearsal dinner, a grand event filled with Chicago's elite, investors, executives, old friends, all gathered to celebrate the future of Kara and Jared. Except tonight wasn't about the future. It was about the truth. I raised my glass, my voice steady. A wedding is built on trust. I began scanning the room. My eyes found Brenda and Jared. They smiled, confident, unaware. I let the words sink in. Let them think this was just another proud father's speech. And then I pressed the button. The screens in the ballroom flickered, and suddenly there they were. Security footage, hotel lobbies, private meetings, stolen documents, Jared and Brenda caught in their own betrayal. The silence broke like glass. A gasp from the guests, a strangled noise from Brenda, and then Kara, my daughter, staring at the screen, horror twisting her face. "Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Tell me this isn't real." But the truth was written all over Brenda's face. She didn't need to say a word. Jared, always the performer, tried to spin it. "Kara, baby, listen to me." But she was already stepping back, disgust washing over her. "Don't call me that," she snapped. How long have you been lying to me?" His mouth opened, then closed. No more smooth words, no more practiced charm. He had nothing, and then came the final blow. The doors burst open. FBI agents stepped in. Jared stiffened, Brenda paled. And just like that, the illusion shattered, their little empire gone. Some downfalls happen in private. Quiet, slow, drawn out. Not this one. No, this was public. A spectacle. The kind of scandal that people whisper about for years. And I made sure of that. Because when you try to take everything from me, I don't just fight back, I burn your empire to the ground. The FBI didn't hesitate. Jared Cantu, you're under arrest. His face, once so confident, so full of charm, twisted into something else, pure panic. He turned to Brenda, expecting her to fix this. But for the first time, she had nothing to say. No perfect excuse, no clever lie, just shock, because she knew what was coming next. "Brenda Kennedy Ferguson," the agent continued, "you're also under arrest." Her breath hitched. I saw the moment she realized this wasn't just about Jared. She was going down too. She turned to me, desperation in her eyes. "Roman, please." But I didn't flinch. Not anymore. "Save it," I muttered. "You already chose your side." The guests sat frozen, unsure whether to stay or flee. Kara was shaking. Her entire world had just been ripped apart in front of hundreds of people. But even through the betrayal, through the heartbreak, I saw something else in her eyes. Strength. She wasn't breaking, she was waking up. The agents led them away. The music had stopped, the party was over, and the wreckage lay at my feet. But this wasn't the end. No, this was only the beginning. Silence. That's all that was left after the storm. The guests had scattered, whispers trailing behind them. The grand ballroom, once filled with laughter and music, now felt hollow. But in the middle of it all, standing amid the wreckage of a life she thought she knew, was Kara, my daughter, my pride, and the only person who truly mattered in this mess. She turned to me, eyes red but determined. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice steadier than I expected. And just like that, I knew she wasn't broken. She was ready to take back her life, to rebuild from the ashes. And I would stand beside her every step of the way. The company came first. Ferguson Construction had to be rebuilt, fortified against the kind of betrayal I had just lived through. Every contract Jared had touched, every deal Brenda had meddled. And I tore them apart, brick by brick. With Elias by my side, we cleaned house, fraud-proof policies, new leadership, stronger walls, both in the company and in ourselves. No one would ever use my name to betray me again. And then there was Kara, the daughter who had once only dreamed of designing buildings, now stood at the head of one. She stepped into the company not as a victim, not as the girl who had been lied to, but as a leader. She was my legacy now, and watching her rise was the only proof I needed that this wasn't the end. It was just a new beginning. Brenda and Jared had thought they could erase me, replace me, but all they did was teach me a lesson I would never forget. You don't take from a man like me and expect to walk away unscathed. Time has a way of revealing what truly matters. 10 years later, the scars remain, but they don't define me. They remind me of what I lost, of what I rebuilt, and of the power of knowing exactly who you are when everything falls apart. And trust me, I know. Brenda and Jared. Prison. Their names, once whispered in high society circles, are now nothing but cautionary tales. Fraud, conspiracy, betrayal, the perfect duo, reduced to nothing. And me, I thrived. Ferguson Construction didn't just survive, it became a global force, stronger, smarter, untouchable, but the real victory. Kara, my daughter, my legacy. She didn't just rise from the ashes, she built something greater. Under her leadership, we expanded, innovated, and proved that integrity isn't just a word, it's a foundation, one that no betrayal could ever shake. And as I sit in my office overlooking the city I helped shape, I realized something. They thought they could destroy me, but all they did was teach me how to rebuild. Without them, some betrayals break you, others, they make you unstoppable.
Keep watching our stories by clicking on one of the videos that appear on the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be alerted about new videos. See you next time.